Welcome to the advanced soil grow. This is where things get a little bit more difficult and you'll sometimes have success and sometimes not. There's no real guarantees, but the process I'm going to show you will up your chances for success greatly. So make sure you follow exactly what I'm doing and hopefully you will have good success. So I already have 3 trays laid out and I've got about a 1/2 inch to 3/4 of an inch of soil in each one, and I've already watered them in thoroughly. The seed we're going to be growing will be cilantro, the Detroit dark red beets, and the basil. I already pre-measured 70 grams of the cilantro. Again, don't get too hung up on that. You could go 60 grams, 80 grams, adjust it to your needs, but you can start with 70 if you want to do exactly like what I'm doing it here in this course. So I'm going to start by just sprinkling these lightly and evenly over the entire tray. One thing to remember about cilantro, when it's not split seed, like these are not split seeds, so they're round, is that each one of these will grow 2 plants. And the idea when you're planting these is to try to convince the sprout to separate from the seed hull. That's the hardest thing when it comes to cilantro. And I'm going to show you exactly how I do that. That will help you get beautiful cilantro that's got very few seed holes on it. Now I've run out of the soil that I received in the kit, and there's a good chance that you have as well. The soil I'm going to be using for the top coat on the cilantro and the beets is going to be a sunshine mix. Sunshine mix number 4, which is a great soil to grow. There's a section that will cover soils and what you should be looking for when you're picking a microgreen soil. There's a lot of soils out there you can use. Some are better than others, and I will cover that a lot more thoroughly for you. So I'm just going to cover the cilantro seed with basically a cereal bowl amount of soil. The soil's been sitting around a little bit, so it's a little bit dusty. Just going to try to evenly spread that. What you're trying to do here is just get the soil to stick to the seed holes, and that will keep them nice and moist and allow the sprout to separate from the seed hole. I'm just going to go get the top layer wet. The rest of the soil is already very wet, but just to water in the top. Cilantro is planted. As you can see, you can still see some of the seed actually sticking up through the soil. That's totally fine. Some of those might have a harder time getting rid of their seed hull, but they'll be totally fine, as you will see pretty soon. Now I've got 60 grams of the Detroit dark red beets, and I'm going to evenly spread those on this tray. Now, just like the cilantro, the beets also contain seeds for like more than one sprout in each little cluster. I call them a cluster seed because of that reason. And so that's also a challenge with these, where you'll have multiple plants trying to grow from one seed hull. And the idea here is you want to keep them nice and covered up with a little bit of soil, just like the cilantro, and that will help shed the seed hull from the sprout. Same as the cilantro, just about a cereal bowl of soil. I'm going to go water that in. Now for the basil. Now what we're going to do with the basil is we're going to use our tablespoon, and we're going to evenly spread 1 tablespoon of basil on this tray. Now basil, the real key is to spread it very even. You do not want a lot of seeds touching each other because they will stick together. You'll notice as soon as these get wet, they form like a gel coat on them, and they will really want to stick to each other and make a mess when they're growing. So really as even as you can get it. It's very difficult to get it perfect, but that's the idea, is to be as even as you can be. I'm just going to mist the basil seed with a little bit of water. Again, the soil is already wet. And it won't take long. It'll only take like about 4 hours or so before you'll see that gel coat form on the basil. And then you'll get a better idea of how good of a job you did spreading your seed. Because as you're spreading it, the black basil can be pretty hard to see. So it really takes a feel for knowing whether or not you're good at evenly spreading it out. You'll get better at it over time. So I've got 3 trays without holes, and they'll just be getting used as humidity domes. And I'll just place these on my rack. They won't be under lights or anything, just in a dark section of my racks. You could stack the cilantro and the beets. I don't recommend stacking the basil, though if you used a thin layer of vermiculite or whatever on top, you could, but it's just not worth it to me. With the beets and the cilantro, I find that if you don't unstack them quick enough, so some of them start to sprout, I feel like it can be too much pressure on the tender sprouts and it causes issues. So I found that just using a humidity dome on these works best for me. Definitely experiment and see what works best for you. I'm going to move these out of my racks, and we will check back very soon. 6 days later, they have been all covered up and domed. That's what our basil looks like. That's ready to go under the lights. The idea with basil is you really want to get the length while they're covered to get them up tall. Otherwise, they're not going to really grow much taller than this after they've gone under the lights. But if you try to go too long, the crop will just get ruined. So they're going to go under the lights now. See our beets? Doing great. They're ready to go under the lights. They probably could have went under the lights yesterday, but that's okay. Cilantro is going to need more time. But if you look close, you can see some of them have begun to sprout. Cilantro takes a long time, so these will be covered up for probably at least another 5 days. Here they are under the lights. And you can see that a bunch of the soil got picked up with the beets. Just going to leave that there for now. I did take my finger and just kind of gently bump some around to try to get it to just kind of loosen up. And as that dries up, it will be easier to deal with. It'll just kind of fall off. But these look pretty good. There's hardly any seed holes stuck to them. And our basil under the lights. It's been 8 days since we planted our cilantro. And see, it's all coming up. You can see it's picking up some soil. So what you do is you take your spray bottle and you set it to stream. Just kind of knock some of the soil down. This helps break up some of the clumps. This is a much better way of doing it than using a knife or anything to kind of break up the soil, because the water doesn't damage the plants as much. And then resist the urge to put these under lights and give them one more day of being covered up. Here's what the beets look like. They're doing great. There are some areas that are hard to see, but where the soil is still kind of clumped up, it's best to just leave that stuff for now. Don't bother with it. These haven't even been watered yet, and they still don't need to be watered. Here's the basil. It's doing really well. This is what I wanted to show you about. If your seeds are too close together, some of the seed holes will kind of come up and get stuck to the other plants. You can just leave them for now, and every now and then just kind of like knock some off. The basil takes a long time before it's ready, and you can see that this tray looks really lightly planted, and that was intentional. It's best to start off light and then increase your density later as you get more comfortable with growing. Day 9, and the cilantro is uncovered. A lot of them have germinated, but a lot of them will still continue to germinate. And I just put them under the lights for the first time. The basil doesn't look much different than yesterday. I just watered it. Beets are still looking really nice. I just watered those as well. It's been exactly 2 weeks since we've planted the beets, the basil, and the cilantro. And the beets look really, really good. There are some holes, but there's not too many. And I will actually be harvesting these now. I would like for them to go another week, but I actually had a customer call me up and he needs them for his catering business. So they're getting cut up tonight. When you harvest them early like this, you'll get about 4 ounces out of a tray like this. If you waited another week, you might get 6 ounces. Here's the basil. Remember how we planted it extremely light? And now it's all filling in. And that's one of the reasons why you want to plant really loosely, not too dense. So you give them all room to grow. And these look really good. I do wish they were a little bit taller. They're going to be a challenge to harvest because you have to get down so close to the soil. But these are going to grow for at least another week. Here's the cilantro. And that grew beautifully too. Some holes, but not too many. And these will grow for another week. So the basil, the cilantro, and the beets are really about a 3-week crop to get them to right about perfect. Like I said, I'm going to harvest these a week early, but they're going to be good just the way they are. That's going to do it for the advanced microgreens. I hope you enjoyed, and I hope you had great results.